15 days from now, we're going to win the state of Arizona, and we're going to win 4 more years in the White House. Everybody needs to get out and vote. Return your absentee ballot today, or vote early in person as soon as you can. When is that starting, the early? When does that start? Now? Now! Get out now, right?
That was President Trump rallying supporters at one of 2 campaign stops in Arizona Monday. Before the visits, the president said these rallies would help him, quote, put away the state. He won Arizona by roughly 3.5 percentage points in 2016. But our latest CBS News battleground tracker estimates the president is currently trailing by 3 percentage points to Joe Biden. No Democratic presidential nominee has won Arizona in 24 years. The tight race in Arizona is one of 6 states our battleground tracker estimates to be toss-ups in the home stretch of the election. For more on where things stand there and in some other key states, let's bring in Dylan Smith, Sean Boyd, and Nick Oxner. Dylan is the editor and publisher of TucsonSentinel.com. Sean is a political specialist with our CBS station in Denver, KCNC. And Nick is the chief investigative reporter for our Charlotte affiliate, WBTV. Welcome to you all. It's great to have your expertise. Dylan, let's begin with you. The president's 2 rallies in Arizona are in Prescott and Tucson. Tell us how these cities differ and what might they suggest about the Trump campaign strategy there.
Well, Prescott is a pretty small community, although it's grown quite a bit over the past several decades. But in central northern Arizona and in a very conservative place, Tucson is in southern Arizona, and Tucson and Pima County at large is mostly a Democratic stronghold. So it's certainly very different places for President Trump to be coming here today. You mentioned that Arizona hasn't gone for a Democrat since Bill Clinton, and actually Biden's lead right now is even more unprecedented than that if you consider the fact that Ross Perot was on the ballot then, and it was a 3-way race, not a 2-way race. So this is something that we have not seen in decades and decades in Arizona, being this close, this much of a toss-up state, and the Democrat actually having such an edge.
Right. It is really remarkable to see at this point. Well, nearly 1 in 5 Arizona residents are 65 or older. Our battleground tracker shows Joe Biden gaining on President Trump in that demographic and leading in the state overall. So, Dylan, what are the issues that resonate with seniors in Arizona, and why might Biden be gaining ground with them?
Well, certainly Democrats have used the issue of health care, Medicare especially, and Social Security for years to try and corral elderly voters. Having seniors be very much disproportionately affected by the COVID-19 outbreak here has really shifted some of them who are ordinarily somewhat conservative voters into the Democratic column, at least in these early polls. And I think these early polls are something that is maybe even a little bit more meaningful right now than they have been in the past. Arizona voters do vote early. In our last couple of election cycles, we've seen 70+% of people cast their ballots before Election Day. And probably this year, that's going to be even higher. We're seeing record-breaking numbers of people voting early. Here in Pima County, which Tucson is in, the county recorder's office, their election staff are now working double shifts to deal with the number of votes, so the number of ballots that are coming in right now.
Wow, 70% in normal times. I imagine the influx must be huge this year. Well, Arizona has not had 2 Democratic senators at the same time in more than 60 years. Our battleground tracker shows Democrat Mark Kelly with an 11-point lead over Republican Martha McSally. Dylan, what issues have defined that race?
In that race, it doesn't seem to be breaking down so much on specific stances on issues so much as it is a partisan referendum and a referendum on President Trump, although Mark Kelly, in the Democratic candidate, is actually leading Joe Biden in the polling. So it's also a little bit of a judgment being cast on Martha McSally, who was a congresswoman here in southern Arizona and then lost the last Senate race here and then was appointed to fill what had been John McCain's seat. So it's, really somewhat about what she's been doing in office, and that has been mostly associating herself as closely as she could with President Trump to stave off any primary challenges from the right wing, although that's not going so well for her right now.
Yeah. Well, let's turn to Colorado. Support for President Trump has been a big issue in that Senate race. A poll out today from the University of Colorado shows former governor and presidential candidate John Hickenlooper ahead of incumbent Republican Cory Gardner. So, Sean, how has Gardner's relationship with the president impacted his reelection chances?
Elaine, this race has been all about President Trump from the get-go, and that's really put Cory Gardner in a very difficult place. Republicans overwhelmingly support the president here in Colorado. And so Gardner needs them. He needs his base to win, but at the same time, his embrace of Trump has put off a lot of unaffiliated voters here, and they make up 40% of our electorate. Gardner's challenger, former Governor John Hickenlooper, has run a weak at best campaign here. During his failed presidential bid, he said repeatedly he didn't want to be a U.S. senator. He'd be bad at the job. Then he gets in the race. He skips a lot of the forums. He flubs an answer to Black Lives Matter. And then he ignores a subpoena to testify at his ethics hearing, is held in contempt, and then found to have violated the state's ethics laws on 2 occasions. And still, he leads in the polls. And after the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the president contracting COVID, this race is all but done here. Republicans have pulled much of their money. They're spending very little here. The main Democratic group that was spending here millions of dollars in support of Hickenlooper has also pulled its ads out of here, a clear sign that it feels like Hickenlooper is in a good place to win. Trump trails Biden here by 13 points, according to the polls. So Gardner would need a lot of split ticket voting to win here. And if 2018 is any indication, he's not going to get it. 2018 was Democrats' best year in Colorado in more than 80 years. They won the governor's seat, the state house, the state senate, and every statewide elected office except Gardner's.
Well, it really is telling when you hear about how resources are being pulled. That really is a telltale sign of the state of that race. So Colorado began in-person voting on Monday. Voters are also sending back their mail-in ballots. Sean, how has the state's history of voting by mail helped it avoid some of the lawsuits and confusion that we're seeing in other states?
You know, Colorado has had universal mail ballots for 7 years now, so we've got a lot of experience in this area. As you mentioned, the in-person voting started today, but most people here, 90-some%, vote by mail. And most of them drop their ballots off in one of many ballot drop-off boxes across the state. But we've also, when we started mail ballot voting here, we also did things to ensure transparency. So, for example, there are barcodes on the envelopes that allow a voter to track their ballot through the mail, just like you'd track a package. Many of the counties live stream the ballot counting process, so you can actually look in and see what's going on. And since we went to all mail ballots, we have had among the highest voter turnout election after election. In addition to making it easy to vote, Colorado also makes it real easy to register. We just passed a new law here where you are automatically registered to vote when you go in to get a new license. 16-year-olds are pre-registered to vote here when they get their license, and you can register and vote on the same day here. Elaine.
Wow, it sounds like there are a lot of valuable lessons to be learned from the way that Colorado handles the voting process itself. All right, Nick Oxner, speaking of lawsuits, thousands of mail-in ballots are in limbo in North Carolina. And at issue, there are witness signatures. The Board of Elections issued new guidance on that on Monday. So, Nick, what is the very latest, and what can voters actually do to ensure that their ballot is counted?
Yeah, Elaine, well, good news for voters. There are about 10,000 of those ballots that were in limbo, and as of 12 o'clock this afternoon, there's finally some certainty on what's going to happen. At issue here was a last-minute effort by the North Carolina Attorney General's office and a Democrat-aligned legal group led by Mark Elias that tried to challenge and expand the regulations surrounding what kinds of fixes and changes can be made to an absentee ballot that's sent in without all of the proper lines filled out and the witness signatures and voter signatures. There's been legal back and forth for several weeks, and as of this afternoon, we have some finality there that a voter's going to be able to fix problems with their absentee ballot unless that ballot is missing a witness signature. But just about every other problem, a voter is going to be able to sign a new affidavit or declaration, and that's going to fix their ballot. The problem, Elaine, is that it's taken so long to get to this point. We're just 2 weeks out from the election, and so it's not really clear whether or not people are going to have enough time to get things in the mail and send them back. If you had a missing witness signature on your ballot, you can either vote a new absentee ballot if you can get it and get it back in time, or you can go to early voting, which started last Thursday, or you can vote in person on Election Day.
Well, we know Joe Biden campaigned in Durham, North Carolina Sunday. He spoke about George Floyd's death and injustices facing Black Americans. Here's some of what he said.
We need leadership that de-escalates tensions, opens lines of communication, and brings us together to heal and to hope. As president, that's precisely what I'll do.
So, Nick, how important is the issue of race to North Carolina voters, and what do people who are still undecided in the state want to hear?
Yeah, so race, we're a state in the South, right? So it's always going to be an issue, and kind of where we are in the state is where it matters differently. So here I am in Charlotte. We've seen a lot of tensions over police shootings and police violence. That's bubbled up in 2016. It's bubbled up again. We had pretty active protests. We've had more controversy in the last month or two surrounding the in-custody death of a Black man in our police department. You've seen those similar issues in Durham and Raleigh in the state's capital. So that's definitely an issue. The other issues, just like what we heard about in Arizona, health care, that's what Democrats in the state have zeroed in on. We're one of the last states, certainly states in the South, to not expand Medicaid, so that Democrats use that as a big issue as well. So, race and criminal justice, police reform, and health care, those are all issues that Democrats certainly are hitting on, and that must mean a reflection that that's what voters and undecided voters care about as well.
All right. Well, Dylan Smith, Sean Boyd, and Nick Oxner, so valuable to hear about what is happening in your states. Thank you all very much. Really appreciate it.